Internet, welcome back. I'm Wes Mandible, and I just got here. Theme song makes the world's show start go round. Things. What's up? Long time no talk. It's been like a week. And by like a week, I think I mean exactly. So how was your week? I'll be honest, I stopped listening. So my week was fantastic. And by fantastic, I mean I couldn't tell you what happened. I've been in an interesting headspace, not a bad headspace, not a good headspace, just an interesting headspace. I've been reflecting a lot as we are now 4 years out from the initial talkings of going into lockdowns in the state of Oregon, which was kind of whispers. It was like, oh, there might be like an ordered stay-at-home mandate, for a little bit. And then that's when everybody started saying, okay, we'll see you in a couple weeks. And then nobody left their house for like 6 months. And like, I say left their house like sparingly because that looked different for different people. There were some people that were like, well, I guess I live in my house forever now. And then there were people that were less that way and felt more inclined to protest and congregate. And everybody else that was in between. And I was somewhere in between because I, unlike a very big number of people, actually worked through the pandemic, which was really a weird experience. I think it was, I know that there were a lot of people, so I hesitate to say a unique experience, but I guess just because something's unique doesn't mean it can only apply to one person. I guess in this case, it could apply to a specific group of people, which would be people that were considered essential workers. But it was interesting because I was in a situation though where I had just moved. I at the time lived by myself. So I would go and I had a big commute. I would commute for basically an hour in the morning. I would go work 9-ish hours and then I would come back. And actually, I ended up having to pick up more work. So I was actually like, I would get up and I would go work a part-time job at like 4 in the morning to 8 in the morning-ish, or maybe about 7, because I had to leave early. So, I mean, I was working like basically 3 extra hours per day. And then I would come home and then I would clean off from that job because it was really sweaty and dirty and awesome. And I would go from there and then I would do my commute. And then I would come back home after the 8 or 9 hour day, which in all honesty, that season of overworking myself, like I was going so hard at the time that I would wake up sick and I would go to bed sick that I eventually had to drop one of the 2 jobs. It was a weird time because it was a time where it was like I was still seeing people, but the time that I had to myself was like I was always doing something, and I remember having a lot of introspective moments to myself, especially in the early morning where I was kind of just getting the day moving, and we had all these huge things that were just happening left and right throughout, that period. You couldn't help but think about it. At least I couldn't. I didn't have a choice but to like actually sit there and do business with things that are like, okay, what do I believe as a person who is in this very room? And it was kind of small. I mean, think like Bo Burnham inside. Like it was every moment that I had that was to myself at home was just this small room where it was like, there's a bed in this corner. There's a kitchenette in this side of the room. And then there's my TV and my couch. And it was like, it was just so strange because there was nothing that I could do to get away from anything. And to know that my situation, my small, weird, insignificant situation, was not just secluded to me. Like I was not the only person that was experiencing it, and there was nowhere that I could go that it would be different. And that was really where the scale of that particular situation or that development of the pandemic really was like, whoa, this is so much bigger than me. And it just makes you see your size so quickly. So, and I know that other people experience this, but I know there's a lot of people too that I think almost denied themselves that because I have friends that are like, yeah, the pandemic was not real, like, and that's just like that is their belief subscription. And I just remember thinking back to that time, the way that we individually deal with those things are different. It was just strange. And this kind of takes me back a little bit to last week where we were talking about console exclusives. I didn't own a Nintendo Switch prior to the pandemic, and I wanted to, but I wasn't in the position to actually secure that. And so, when the pandemic came around and I was in the position to buy one, I ended up getting one because Animal Crossing came out. So actually, I do feel like I have to backpedal a little bit on last week. While last week is a current standing of how I view things now and how I make those decisions. I certainly don't think that that was false at the time. But no, so I've been going back and playing Animal Crossing again, which has these very specific memories tied back to that time, like having the windows open in the spring and sitting on my couch on a day off. Part of that rabbit hole I've been thinking about with that season was the impact that it all had on the traffic of, like the metro area. And that wasn't just where I lived. And one of the most major examples of that was Southern California. You had all of this smog and you couldn't see, the sunset. People who are always coming north from California almost always talk about how the sunsets are better once you leave. And I'm sure that Northern California experiences this too, because it's not as dense population wise, where you can actually see the colors of a sunset. It's not just like red sky, And so we had all these people that suddenly weren't driving, and we still don't have full numbers back to, the offices of the workforce. Like that isn't a new statistic. There's lots of older generation workers that are insisting on people coming back. A lot of old fashioned, mindsets still around that. And, I think that there is something to socializing and coexisting with your colleagues to a degree. But I think that we're seeing a development that is overall important for the workforce. And I think a big development of that was that, you see a big load taken off of traffic. And obviously the workforce in its entirety doesn't get that. You don't get baristas that work from home. You don't get, zookeepers that work from home. There's lots of fields that doesn't apply to. People that are working in the stores, that are restocking shelves, all those things that we considered to be essential during the pandemic. Subconsciously, we still consider those essential today. We just don't put the same societal strain on those people like we did. So I think coming back around, it was interesting to me to see a major impact like that on just the environment, where it's like people have been home for like 2 weeks and we're already seeing this. And I'm like over here playing my Animal Crossing and playing my Red Dead Redemption 2 and, being like, man, it seems like cars are kind of a big contributor to this kind of thing. And, I'll save the preaching because I'm no Greta Thunberg. I'm really not even an environmental, I'm not even passionate about the environment. I think that it's important to steward the earth. I think it's important to take care of what's been given to us. But, in the same breath, I'm not going to This isn't what I'm here for. I do think that it's important to like recognize, hey, like this was something that wasn't here until we decided that it was going to be here. How much is efficiency truly worth in the long scope of the world? And that made me remember that old show. It's like, I don't know, 10 years old at this point, maybe 15. So if that, I guess that doesn't really constitute old. Revolution, the show where they like shut all the power off and they didn't represent it very well. And then like the airplanes started falling out of the sky. And it's like, well, that's not really how that works. But in theory, it was kind of a cool idea because everybody had to go back to, there was all the farming and, you know, there was like a big boom in agriculture because that's what you needed to do. People needed to support their villages and their neighborhoods and, you know, all this. There was like, everybody was back on horses because the cars didn't work, you know, and that show kind of got weird as time went on where it was like, you know, there's lots of details there, but if you ever want to watch it, it's called Revolution. I don't remember what station it aired on at the time. Not that any of these kids these days know what airing on TV means. I'm just kidding. I'm not one of those people that generalize. I know there's people that, because guess what, boomers? They still air things on television. They still write checks, okay? I still write. See what you made me do. I'm Gen Z, and I can sign a check, thank you. But you know what you don't know how to do? You can't make a Word doc a PDF. And you want to know how to write to a PDF. Oh, sweet summer boomer. How precious. Anyway, that's a tangent. Listen, every major thing that you do on a giant scale has consequences. And consequences don't have to be good or bad. Consequences just means that there is aftermath from a decision. That applies to everything. There is nothing that you can do in the world that is consequence free. Because when you do this, this happens. Any coders out there? If this, then that. If cars, then exhaust. If horse, then poop. You know what I'm saying? Like there is a whole, you could always point out a consequence of anything you do. And that's the problem with going around and debating things, is that it's like, yeah, there's always going to be a counterpoint. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a conversation like this. And it doesn't mean that we should be complacent. Always going to be changing things. We're always going to be updating things. It sounds cynical, I guess, to say it, but I don't think that we're ever going to regress in a way that is going to be the cause for an improvement. I think that we're always going to progress, as we always do, until there's a reason that we need to shift. And I think that it will always be to the detriment of humans. Like, it sounds so cynical to say. I just think that that's the natural progression of humanity. I think that's just how it goes. We have big groups of people that get excited about things. They're going to be saying, hey, yes, this iPhone thing is great. And then we're going to keep going down the iPhone path. And we're like, hey, look, we could make it bigger. And then you have the tablet and people are like, wow, this is awesome. And then you start handing them to kids, and then kids are like, wow, these are awesome. And then they like glued to them. You know, just like we did with computers, you know, Gen Z and millennials, we're like, wow, internet are sweet, you know, and now the world is internet. And now it's like, we have the iPads, and then it's going to be the like headset thing where like people, and primarily I think it's going to be kids that really start this, is that it's like, hey, we use this and we figured out how to use this, just like we did with computers. And older people are like, hey, how do I use this? And they're trying to hire people to help them get with the times. It's going to be the same thing. This is a progression that you cannot stop. And that doesn't mean that you need to get on board or get out of the way, but you at least need to be, I don't know, aware. There is always a progression to things that will never stop. And part of that is amazing. And part of that is absolutely terrifying, no matter how you slice it. You know, I think in just kind of reflection of, you know, those situations and the games that we play to cope and move through these things, it's interesting how we find ways to try to escape something like a global pandemic in our small studio apartment. And, you get 4 years of space from that thing, and the second that you sit down to play that escape, you're right back there. And you feel just as small as you ever did. But I will say that one of the things that comes with that is that little piece of safety that was associated in the first place. Anyway, I think that's all I got for today. I just felt kind of reflective and wanted to share kind of what I was thinking about in regards to that. And I don't know. It's never bad to spend a little time with yourself and ponder your place in the universe, your size, your scale. Just be a little introspective every once in a while. Just think about it. That's going to do it. I'm Wes Mandible. You can find me across all the platforms, and by all I mean YouTube, obviously, Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok. All Wes Mandible, unified across all platforms. I appreciate you hanging out, listening to me babble on and on and on. And if I got anything wrong, just remember, take it easy. I just got here. See ya.